See him. Commissioner Batts. I don't see it. I don't see Commissioner Batts. Commissioner Bowers, I see. Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Coleman.
Yes, I'm
Commissioner
here.
Purcell and Commissioner Thaden. Okay, yes, we do have a quorum.
Could I
Excuse
ask,
me.
we do have a quorum, fine. Then we'll call the meeting officially to order. I would ask Latanya if she would to reach out to the other commissioners. I know that we had all of the commissioners but one, I believe, on the previous meeting call, and maybe they're just having difficulties logging in or some other problem. But in the meantime, I know, Saul, that this is your moment, and I defer to you because this is, for many of us, the highlight of the day.
Yeah, I know Christine particularly likes this. So, pursuant to Executive Order 16, signed by the Governor of Tennessee, we are conducting essential business of MDHA by virtue of a virtual meeting. The public has been invited to participate in the meeting and join the meeting. And in addition, the meeting is being recorded for posterity and for your viewing pleasure at a later date on YouTube. Lastly, I'll just take a minute to introduce a new member of our law firm, Paige Lyle. Paige, why don't you wave? Paige is going to be my primary backup going forward. And I thought it'd be a good idea to get her indoctrinated to the way we do things. So Paige is going to be sitting in on this meeting for us, with us.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to meet Paige, and I noticed the change already. You didn't used to say for posterity at your viewing pleasure, and I have to attribute those new words to Paige. The viewing pleasure was not something that had ever occurred to the Board of MDHA before, but I think it's a nice addition to the legal words. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Welcome, Paige. You have before you the agenda, and the first order now is the approval of minutes of the July 14th meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion is made. And a second?
Second.
There's one correction.
Please, this is the time.
On the last page, it described Dexter Samuels as the executive director, and he is actually the chair of the board.
Yes. In fact, that's exactly how it should be described. He is now the past chair of the board. His term ended.
Exactly.
But I think it should absolutely read either chair or past chair. Which would you prefer, Paula?
Well, at that time, was he still the chair?
Yes, he was.
Well, he for the purposes of the minutes, he was the chair.
I think it should, exactly. So the change is it should read, instead of executive director, chair of the Board of Commissioners of the Airport Authority. That change will be made. Any other changes? Are you ready to vote on the minutes as amended? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. And you adopt. We have introductions now as the next order of business, and we are pleased to welcome and introduce Ms. Vanessa Clark, who is the president of Preston Taylor Resident Association, as well as Jamila Grimes, who is the property manager at Preston Taylor. President Clark, are you with us?
Yes. Hey, how everybody doing?
Great, thank you.
We're good. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, thank you. This is Vanessa Clark with the Preston Taylor. Can y'all hear me? This is Vanessa Clark with the Preston Taylor property, and I'm the new RA president. And I kicked off my first event on July the 27th with the kids of giving the man away. And it was a great success, but I enjoyed doing it with the kids. And I look forward in doing more in the community.
Okay, I'm sorry. My phone is kind of breaking up here. I'm coming in and out. This is Ms. Grimes, Jamila Grimes, the property manager at Preston Taylor. Is everyone doing okay today?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, so Vanessa Clark, she is our new RA president, so we're really excited about her coming on board. And as she stated, she did a face mask giveaway on July 27th, which was a big success. And she was able to give masks away to the residents who didn't have masks, as well as people who were in the community who didn't have masks. And that was, to ensure that they were following the mask guidelines of Davidson County. So they were really excited to receive those masks. And she's also, she facilitates, or she assists in facilitating an event that happens yearly. It's called the West Nashville Come Together community event. So she's able to get financial resources from the community to assist with that. So we are really excited about her coming on board again, because she's been a part of the community at Preston-Taylor. She's lived here for a while. So she has the respect of the residents. She has such a great rapport with them. So she's really capable of having these enriching activities that'll be beneficial for each age group in the community. So we have a lot of confidence in her. So I'm excited about that. And some of the things that have been going on at the property, we have been able to maintain a low occupancy, vacancies, not occupancy. We are currently 99% occupied. So we have 2 vacancies at this time, where we are moving in a person tomorrow. So that will leave us with 1 vacant unit, which we are really excited about. We have been hustling, trying to keep the vacancies low during this pandemic. Another thing that we're really excited about, we had 4 homeowners with our residents. So, and one of the homeowners was the past RA president, Santa Mathis. So we're real big on that, trying to get our residents to that next step of home ownership. So that's what's been going on here at Preston-Taylor. So we just want to say thank you, and we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both for being here today. Any questions from commissioners of either Ms. Grimes or Ms. Clark?
Yes, one quick question. Could you just share a little bit more about the home ownership program and how that works?
Well, 2 of the residents, they were a part of the FSS program, where a portion of their income, what they would pay, we would match that, and it would go into a separate account for them. And so as long as they kept their job, like I said, a portion of their income would go into this account. So as long as they maintain employment, at the end of the program, they would receive that money. And so they also had to make sure that they, 1, kept the job, and make sure they paid their rent on time. So they would check in with us. We would check in with them to make sure they were on track with that. And from that point, they were also looking for a home. And then we also got them connected with our social services coordinator to help them learn how to budget their money, to ensure that they were on track, to learn how to save. We also got them connected with, if they didn't already have someone to help them find a home, and that whole process with finding a lender, we had them set up with someone to help them with that. And so, and then from there, they would get with a realtor if they didn't already have one. So one of them, I think, did that. I can't remember. We had one resident who moved out in April. We actually helped her find a realtor, and she went through that realtor helped her find a lender, and they went through that whole process together. And and she was able to, they helped her find a home, helped her get the lender, and it was a really nice process. But they, all of them worked closely with our social services coordinator, and the budgeting process was key, because some of them, they didn't really understand that process in the beginning, and so she put a class together for them so they would understand, what that process looked like in order to make sure their funds were in place in that process. So once they left Preston Taylor, they would know how to prioritize things. And so once they got to that point where they found the home that they were going to move to, they put their notice in with us, and then they set up the paperwork so the money would be dispersed to them once they moved. And so we had it timed, like so they would, be able to have their money so they could go to their closing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do you know what county they bought their homes in? Were they able to buy in Davidson County?
Two of them I know moved to Clarksville. And then the most recent one moved to Davidson County.
Okay, so we
I
kept
don't know
one.
the last one moved. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
say that one more time.
So we're able to keep one of them in Davidson County.
Yes, I don't know I have to find out about where the first one moved to. She may have moved to, but the last one that just recently moved, she moved to Davidson County, and then the other two moved to Clarksville.
And does your program require completion of homebuyer education by a HUD certified homebuyer education agency?
So Commissioner Bowers,
No.
we have 153 residents enrolled in this family self-sufficiency program.
Yep.
It's a federal program with federal requirements that address everything you're asking, including the education, the economic self-sufficiency, et cetera. President Taylor runs a great program, does a great job. You're hearing on the grassroots level, but if you want, we can give you a separate, when I get with you next, I can give you a separate presentation on it. It's a long-standing program, been in the HUD and MDHA for at least 30 years. It's very successful, and it's one of the carryovers in the RAD we've had a little bit of a challenge with, but not too much of a challenge with. And it's part of our Envision Center program as well. So it's a great story. It's a great program. We work a lot with Danny Heron. We partner the escrow account with Danny and his work, along with local realtors and others. So it's a really great program. But let the property manager finish with the detailed questions you've got. But if you want an overall program view, we can certainly give that to you.
Yeah, it just meets the federal program guidelines. I'm familiar with those. Thanks. No, I'm just curious, how many people become homeowners every year, but you probably got that data and you could provide that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the public housing plan, if you've read the write-up, you'll note in there's a paragraph on that, and I'm pretty sure those statistics are in there for 2019, how many homeowners we had and how many were in the program for 2019. That's part of the report we provide. It's one of the things you're voting on today.
Thanks.
Well, just to follow up quickly, though, Ms. Grimes, I guess to Commissioner Bauer's question, how does the program work from your perspective? How does it do from the front lines, as Mr. Harbison indicated?
I think it works well, as long as they do their part, and they do. The residents are excited about it. That they are able to have those resources, the financial resources that helps them with the closing costs. And I think that's the big thing, the biggest thing, that they have those funds to do that. I mean, I think about when now I'm not from here, but when I purchased my home, I struggled trying to come up with those funds for my closing costs. So to have that money to do that, I think that's awesome. So I think they really appreciate that, with the program helping them do that. And that's one of the things that they talk about in the end. The most recent the resident that left, and she was in tears to know that she had that money to do that, and she was just grateful. Because she was thankful that she had the opportunity to be at Preston Taylor. She realized, hey, this is my time to move on, and I finally get, to have my own, paying into something that belongs to her now.
Do you know how long her journey was from the time she entered to the time she closed?
I can tell you. Give me just a second.
It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious to know about how long
I
it,
don't have that information. I'm looking it up for you. I don't have that information off the
top of your
top of
head.
my head.
Well, while you're looking, very quickly, if I could just ask Ms. Clark how things are going in terms of social distancing and the the virus, and how has that affected your work as the resident association?
It's going okay. I kind of stay distant. I just stay on, my back porch, but just seeing in the community, they kind of doing it too, doing the same thing. Sometimes the smaller kids won't put on masks, but I'll just say something to them sometimes in a nice way to kind of encourage them to wear them. But for the most part, it's doing pretty good.
Thank you. That's a great comfort. Any other questions?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much, both of you, for joining us today, and for the work you're doing every day there, and especially to the new president of the Resident Association. It's a hard job being president of a resident association. Getting elected is not simple either, but serving is tough, and we're very thankful for your enthusiasm and your hard work. Thank you very, very much.
All right, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. From the next agenda item now. Thank you, Ms. Grimes. On the next agenda item is public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Jamie, did you have any public comments? I believe the answer is no. Can you validate, please?
Well, we'll hold on that agenda item and defer it down. We'll go to agenda item.
We do not have any public comments.
All right. Case, we'll move to item number 5. Report from Human Resources Committee met this morning. Commissioner Ansari chairs this committee, and Commissioner Ansari, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. So this morning we had a nice, brief, and concise meeting to close out the agency safety and health plan. We started these meetings back at our previous meeting of July 17th, and so what we were doing was really reviewing the agency's plan. And so a couple of things jumped out. I think are probably worthy of being for the record as the chairman of the board pointed out, this was the first time in 9 years that this plan had been updated and approved by the board. And so I think what we will explore in the future is figure out what is a better paced and more regular interval for updating the agency safety and health plan. Now, that doesn't mean, even though it hadn't been put in front of the board in 9 years, it doesn't mean that the plan itself had been updated, because part of the plan is to maintain compliance with both state and federal occupational health safety standards. And we were assured that we continue to update and remain in compliance with both state and federal programs. So I think the big thing that really stood out, I think that was informative for the board, is that our NCIC code, which is essentially the code for determining our workers' comp. So primarily the place where your safety program really, the rubber meets the road is in incidents and injuries, and the cost that you pay for your workers' compensation and your liability programs. Our rating as an agency is a 1, which ensures that we pay the lowest and most competitive rates for workers' comp insurance. And so Ms. Pat Thicklin has been with us for 20 years, so over half the time that the program has been in place. And so we felt very comfortable about the agency safety and health plan. Commissioner Coleman asked a few questions related to kind of sort of our employees' approach or perceptions around the program and around training. And there has been no indication either through their ability to report either through HR or through some kind of independent reporting agency that they believe that the safety and health plans that are in place by the at MDHA are insufficient. So with that, there was a vote and the committee approved the resolution at its committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will then take that as a motion to adopt the committee's resolution, and I'll call on Mr. Solomon, I believe, for a technical amendment.
Mute.
Can't hear you. We're not hearing you, so can't hear you.
Yeah, you couldn't hear me?
Now we can.
In reviewing the resolution, the first time with the assistance of the chair, we came to realize that the word ordained appeared in the first paragraph. And I asked Latanya to change that, which she dutifully did. And what I failed to realize that the word ordained appears two other places in the resolution. And so we, instead of the word resolved. And so we're just going to have that changed from ordained to resolved, the last two paragraphs of the resolution. Other than that, the resolution's in good shape. So with those changes, that would be the resolution before the board.
Is there any objection to that technical amendment to the resolution as approved by the committee? This goes a little bit back to our discussion earlier about the performance of weddings, which would be an appropriate use of the word ordained, but perhaps not anymore for resolutions. But with that amendment and that understanding, is there any further discussion? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no, and you adopt. We're now to the next, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're now to the next item, which is item 6, and this is the report from the Joint Development and Finance Committee, which are both Chair Thaden and Chair Ansari.
Thank you. So most recently, we had a joint committee meeting on August 6th to review and actually really have a presentation of the 2021 budget. During that meeting, there was definite recognition that staff had really taken input and feedback from commissioners in the presentation of those materials to improve how the budget is presented, making it hopefully more transparent, both for commissioners and the public moving forward. The budget had an operating income of approximately $150 million and operating expenses of approximately $131 million. During that presentation, commissioners requested some additional information before we review this again in our September Joint Finance and Development Committee meeting, and before it moves on for a vote in our September board meeting. And so that we are expecting those materials within the next 2 weeks, and we will meet further on it then. And the meeting was adjourned. So moving on to, if I may,
Please.
to our next agenda item. That relates to the pilot agreement for Hickory Ridge. When we had our Joint Finance and Development Committee meeting in July, I believe it was July 9th, we ended up reviewing this pilot, which was for a 60-unit affordable housing development, all with 2 to 3 bedrooms, serving an average area median income of 60% AMI for residents, and it's 100% affordable, this development. This is a 9% LIHTC deal. And after reviewing all of that information, it was recommended to the board to approve the pilot agreement. And with that, I would like to move that motion now.
You have heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. And you adopt. Thank you. Next item.
Yes, so there's a quick correction in the agenda here. So we actually reviewed the Public Housing Authority annual plan in a Housing and Community Services Committee meeting, which met on July 9th. So in that Housing and Community Services Committee meeting, we reviewed the Public Housing Authority plan, and it is worth noting that the plan, because of our RAD conversion, that plan really is only applying to predominantly our housing choice voucher program, and this is a requirement from HUD for us to put in this plan. And so we reviewed that material, and it was recommended unanimously that the Public Housing Authority annual plan. And so I would like to put that motion forward now.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no, and you adopt. Anything further from either development or finance? Thank you. I would also add to what the chair said, the presentation of this information concerning the finances of the agency have come earlier in the agency's fiscal year than ever before in history. And we recognize that that was a lot of work by the administration here, everyone involved, and we appreciate that. I think it goes without saying. And I join all members of finance in particular in saying we look forward to the next round of materials, which we think will put us in good form to reach a conclusion in record time on the budget for next year. We're now at the executive report section of our agenda, and this is item 7, executive director's reports.
Thank you, Commissioner Purcell. That's great. Couple of personnel items in your board packet. Should have been a brief discussion or a letter from our own Deputy Executive Director, Mr. Jim Thilgen, who is the president of the Tennessee Housing Authority Risk Pool. So often we have questions on how we know we're insured properly and how we know that we do the right thing. Our own Jim Thilgen leads all the insurance programs for all the housing authorities in the state. And I just want to call that to your attention of what a great quality deputy we have and what his success has been in this area to make sure it remains highly solvent and protects all of our interests along with everything else that he does for us. Also, I'd like to introduce, I did this partly at the previous committee meeting. We've hired a new chief operating officer. We're leaving Buck Dellinger of being both chief operating officer and chief development officer simultaneously. He will now focus his very great skills on just development. I say just development. Of course, we have a lot of construction underway, a lot of development underway, and a lot of information and work to be done in that area. But it is with great pleasure I welcome Michael Herter. He goes by the name of Gus. He comes to us from Ascension Technologies, Ascension Health Group in St. Louis, where he was the vice president of operations for their information technology and led a $225 million budget and a workforce of over 1,100 associates. He is, so for Aioli and I, he's a West Point graduate. So when Army Navy comes, we'll be able to have a spirited discussion on the merits of that event. I think Aioli played in the Army Navy game a few times. He had a very successful and really tremendous career in the Army after West Point, including being the deputy chief of staff for operations at West Point. So he has an academic background, as well as he was the base commander at Fort Benning, Georgia, which is the equivalent of being, in some ways, a city mayor, but you run all the functions, more like a city manager. It's not as much risk, but because you're assigned to the post, but there's some similarities.
I would not want to comment on what's more political, but I'm glad to know that you feel that way.
Anyway, he has a great background experience in housing from that event and reached for. So a highly qualified, superb candidate. Like me and other members of our staff, he is a disabled veteran, so he does count on our, as we look to be diverse in our hirings, he does count as a protected class. And Gus, if there's anything you'd like to say, please, I'd like to introduce Gus to us and the board. He's already made a great impact. He's been here with 2 weeks. He's still in box at his new home, just got moved in, I think, last week. So he's just joining us, and it's my pleasure to introduce Gus to you. And Gus, if you have anything to say, please chime in.
Just want to say thank you, Mr. Harbison, and just for the board. I'm happy to be here and just been blessed with the welcome that my family has received from Nashville and the surrounding areas. So we're excited to be here and excited to be a part of this great MDHA team and part of Nashville, and want to make a difference like all of you. So thank you, and look forward to meeting you personally.
Thank you. I'll take a few minutes. We have a lot always going on, and it's tough sometimes to hit the high points. But I know that everyone is, as I am, daily worried about the COVID situation. And just to update a few statistics, we continue testing all of our employees on a monthly basis. We're about halfway through for August. We've tested 808 of our employees thus far. 22 have come up confirmed as positive, and 18 have recovered. We're praying for the other 4. But that robust testing program is a component of our overall security and safety program, which includes testing of residents. And to date, we've tested 1,311 residents. And as far as we know, 19 are confirmed. And we can't get the results of the tests unless they come to us. And when they do come to us, we provide a social worker to assist them with their quarantine. And to our knowledge, 17 have recovered of the 19 residents that were positive. I'll hit a few of the highlights of what we're doing to protect ourselves and the residents. I think everyone knows that we're only responding to emergency and priority tenant work requests. And we require confirmation from the head of household that no one of the residents has any symptoms or is suffering from COVID-19 before we get involved. That is putting us a little bit behind our preventive maintenance program, and we're studying how we're going to recover on that. What we are normally doing, especially in the summer, is doing survey and checks of apartments across the portfolio to make sure that we are maintaining our portfolio in an appropriate way. Our offices remain closed to the public and walk-in resident services. Most of our staff, just over 160, are working from home with an active line of communication via telecommuting. And for those that are in the maintenance world, because you can't do emergency maintenance work orders from a computer, they are working 1 week on, 1 week off. We split those staffs in half. Everyone here has been provided masks. We have an Ascension developed app that we use each day. We take our temperature, we log in on it, make sure we have any symptoms. If we do, it goes by telemedicine directly to a provider who does an assessment of whether we need to go be tested or not. And we have all common areas closed and have been posted to discourage gatherings. All those areas are also surveyed by an atomizer that comes through and cleans the air twice a week, as well as our horizontal surfaces are cleaned. And for our maintenance teams, we've put together pretty robust procedures. They come to the door, they stay 6 feet back as they knock. They ask the resident if they have any symptoms like the flu. If the response is yes, they're asked to go to another room while essential work is done. If it's a crisis, if not, we defer the work order. Where possible, we ask them to leave the apartment. And then as they come in and as they exit, they wipe down any surfaces they have contact with them or with the work with disinfectant. They have full protective gear. And as I said, we don't do any non-emergent work. We think that's been successful for us along with the robust testing program. In addition, we do not have any meetings with groups larger than 10 people. We generally don't have larger than more than 3 or 4. All public hearings and meetings like this one are held electronically. And we have a web page, and I invite you to look on our website. We have a really quite good website that details much of what I'm describing here if you'd like to get an update. For our residents, our towers remain controlled access because they're all elderly, and we're very concerned about that, but we've been successful in that program. We'll continue it. The residents in general support that. I've had very few requests, although we have some, for us to relent on the restrictions of not allowing visitors in the towers other than those that are coming from medical or support services to the residents. So that's a quick highlight. I know it's a concern for the board. It's something that keeps me, concerned all the time. Nothing is more important than the talent we have and the people we have, and we work pretty hard at it. Always looking for ways to improve. We're on HUD calls each week with HUD and the nonprofits, FADA, CLAPA, NARO, on best procedures across the country. And we believe that where we are today is, while not perfect, a good place to be. On to business operations, I spent some time with the Tennessee Housing Development Agency board. Their quality assurance program for 2021 came out with a very short public comment period. We provided our input primarily against a thing called Enterprise 360, which would have severely complicated our ability to use LIHTC. And they, in fact, have relented on that part of the QAP. So just for information, the board, I did appear in front of them, gave our testimony as well as written comments to them, and 2 of our 3 major comments were adopted and not published in the quality assurance program. That program is the key to us getting the low-income housing tax credits that are the foundation for our financing for most of our construction to remediate concentrated poverty. The board approved, thank you, an interest rate reduction for 10th and Jefferson. We are pending that. It has been approved by HUD. It is not processed yet through all of HUD. We're hopeful that it will happen soon, but we've been on a week-to-week for closing this for about 45 days. We're tracking it weekly, but to date, we have not closed that loan. And for the townhomes, where we have the cooperative agreement with the city, and thanks again to the Metropolitan Government for the capital spending plan funds. These are for townhomes here at Casey. We had closed the loan on that, and we'll be moving forward with notice to proceed for that project. On media events, our major media event has been 3 family waiting list opening in July. We had a great deal of interest. As well, we released the point in time counts for the homeless inventory. I think one of our best interactions locally is our work with the CARES Act funding, which involves both our strategy team as well as ML Alexander's great group from community development. We've already issued the RFAs to execute most of the first tranche of money. The major discussions remain about $8.4 million of emergency solution grants, and we're in daily work with both the chief of staff of the city as well as the key members of the Metropolitan Homeless Impact Division. We're also continuing to work our philanthropic solicitation efforts. Christine Lalonde has developed a solid procedural approach to this. We think we'll have some success there. We have people very interested in helping us with some measure of philanthropy as we continue to remediate concentrated poverty and to build. We had a couple of questions on the board on the Promise Zone and our status. The Promise Zone is active. We have hired in place 4 AmeriCorps Vistas for the 4th year of the Promise Zone. These Vista are volunteers that then work with nonprofits across the community. We are the administrator of it, but we don't really have control over them. They're controlled by their nonprofit, and they've now been approved and they should be onboarded by the end of the month with their nonprofits. Our development program is very robust. I just hit a few of the highlights. Forest Bend Townhomes, the 47 townhomes that we'll property manage and enter into a joint agreement for LIHTC is at 97%. We're finishing the punch list. We do not have final UNOs yet for everything, but the first 4 buildings we have occupancy permits for, and we've managed to get occupied. The Jeff Street Pocket Park, which is a community development project, which we're really excited about, is 83% complete. If you go down, Randy Rogers used to be on Rosa Parks, site demolition is complete. The project's coming out of the ground, and that is exciting to us. And it brings in 50 first ever new subsidies, fully subsidized subsidies under our Fair Cloth Amendment. The new central management facility is about a quarter done. Curb Victory Hall, if you go down by Edge Hill, is 97% complete. We're taking applications and leasing up to homeless veterans now. Our trolley barns over on Rolling Mill Hill, we've entered the GMP, and we've started early release package to start construction on that site, and it's moving along. Metro Supportive Housing, we're in collaboration discussion with Metro on how the permanent homeless site will come out of the ground. We're not driving that train. We're really there just to facilitate, make sure it meets the federal standards, and it is moving forward. Here at Casey, well, just walk around. We've got a lot coming out of the ground. Boswell 1 is complete. That's Mosley on 6. Boswell 2 and the townhomes are complete and leasing up. Boswell 3 is at about 80%. Boswell 3A, the townhomes I just described. Boswell 4 is our next LIHTC that we just received $400,000 for. So all of those in aggregate are moving the side of Casey as you face it from the river on the right-hand side is all coming to completion within the next 18 months. I mean, Vision, Napier, and Sudicum, the exciting news there, which I just touched on last week, our last board meeting, we are the only housing authority in the state of Tennessee to be awarded an Envision Center by the Secretary at HUD. That provides a site, and if you look at look there at Lafayette, you'll see the Envision Center. We have at least 12 nonprofit partners with the goal of providing a one-stop shop for our residents to have a chance to move out of housing into higher incomes, higher education, and move on with their lives. I believe the board will hear from HUD, and a HUD prominent senior member will want to join us in the September meeting to congratulate on this and discuss what they see as some of the unique aspects of what the staff has done. It really is a neat place if you get a chance. We don't have a lot of people there, but we are reaching out to our residents there and making a real difference in their lives with this. Rental assistance, as everyone knows, we are in shortfall. HUD has been extraordinarily supportive. I want to thank Deborah Lee, our workout manager, who's been just fantastic in going through the nuts and bolts of Norman, me, Melinda, Jim Thilgen, others on the phone as we month to month receive additional funding to keep our program solvent. As a result of COVID, there's been, as you know, as we've discussed, a large number of recertifications down to minimum rents. We have a fixed amount of budget. Our budget authority that was allocated to us was insufficient to carry the fiscal year. And in August and in September, August certainly, we've already got the money. In August and September to close out the fiscal year, HUD has made the commitment to fully fund our program. I'll finish with just a couple of great highlights and invitations. On September 3rd at noon, this is a first for MDHA, we're going to have our Employee Recognition Day. Typically, we do this at a nice site and have a picnic or have families and try to make it just a fun day. And this is where we issue annual employee awards. We generally do it in July. We've been kicking it down the road for a while, and we're going to do a virtual Employee Awards Day via PowerPoint and the web. Those details are not refined yet, but we're working on it. And if any of the board members, you'll get an invitation. If you can make it to join us on the 3rd of September at 12 o'clock for Employee Recognition Day, that would be great. And last, I was interviewed yesterday by the Urban Land Institute. We've been nominated for the Excellence in Development Award for Kirkpatrick Park. We're one of the 2 finalists for that award. We've also been nominated by the Urban Land Institute to the Ron Terwigler Award. I may have mispronounced that. I don't know where we stand, but you can't get nominated to the higher award unless you win the ULI award. So that gives us a good sense that we may be better than just finishing in the top 2. We might actually be winning the Excellence in Development Award. I realize that's a lot verbally fast. I wanted to give you the highlights of a lot of great things going on in this agency. Tremendous load of talented people working really hard to make a difference in the community and remediate concentrated poverty through mixed income development and provide an opportunity for those people who need federally subsidized apartments for the low income residents. And subject to your questions, which I anticipate there'll be a few since I've covered a lot, that is my presentation.
Are there questions? I will remind the commissioners that we do have the most exciting part of our year still ahead, which is ethics training. I know how much everyone has been looking forward to that, but understanding that we have that still ahead, are there any questions for the executive director?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman.
There have been announcements about waiting lists for 3 of our properties. What's the status overall? Because I remember some years back, and again, this is several years back, there were thousands on the waiting list. So where are we with that now?
That's a great, simple question without a tremendous, short, simple answer. We have a lot of people on the waiting list. I'll get a complete count, but I'll give you an idea of the challenge. Each property now runs their own waiting list. There's not a combined waiting list. So if you add up 19 properties and all the waiting lists, it's a really big number. The only way to know for sure how many people are on the waiting list would be to cross-reference and eliminate common names, which we have no electronic means to do so. So any number we come up with is somewhat of an estimate. And I'll take that for the record and come back to our best estimate. I can certainly give you, I can't do it off the top of my head. We can give you a waiting list number by site and for our voucher program. An aggregate number, I would just caution, could be misleading because we have no way other than to sit down and take names and go side by side to do a cross elimination and know who has signed up for more than one waiting list. And many, many people do sign up for more than one waiting list. So may I come back to you with that, and I promise I won't forget you. We'll get the status overall by site of our waiting lists. I would caution about an aggregating that number into one number. It can be misleading. But we'll do our best to see if there's any way to cross-reference and eliminate those names.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is there have been several announcements, periodic announcements about vacancies, and I'm just trying to figure out how that works and how that comes about.
Okay. In general terms, and again, I'll get a write-up for this a little bit more detailed. As the waiting list goes down by property, it reaches a threshold in which we know a certain number of vacancies each month occur. Say that number is 50. If you only have 50 people on the waiting list, you have 1 month's worth of waiting list, right? So as a number reaches a certain threshold, and it varies by property depending on property size and nature, the property manager makes a decision, I need to reopen the waiting list. The other thing that occurs is as the waiting list is used, people change because the person that's at the way back in the queue, back in the list, the information they provided may now be 18 months old or a year old. And then you go make the contact and you don't have fresh information and you can't find them. So a combination of those leading to the judgment of the property manager, supervised by the senior property manager, supervised by Will Biggs, to decide whether each property list should be open. It's part numerical in that we have so many people left the waiting list and we project this number of vacancies across the next few months. And it's part subjective in that, my gosh, the last 5 records we pulled down, every one of them had bad data on it. We really need to refresh the waiting list because we need to refresh the data that's on them. They combine together to make a reasoned, thoughtful judgment call by property. I can give you more on how we do that if that's helpful.
Okay, it's still not kind of, well, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, understand. And again, those who are more, you said that it's not, there's not an aggregate list of all of the properties, and that's not possible to do because they're duplicates. I don't quite understand that.
Okay, I'll try to give an example. If I'm someone of low income and I know there are 3 waiting lists open, I'm going to apply to all 3.
Correct.
So now, we have no way to determine if John Smith at property A and John Smith at property B and John Smith at property C is the same person when we look back at that waiting list later. We don't have a really good way to do that. And
well,
so go ahead.
Don't we compile information like address or birth date or social security number or something like that?
We do, but we don't have a good
electronic application.
It's all in the application, it is, but it's not in an electronic format that we can reconcile across all the properties easily.
Okay, so it is not impossible. It's just that it's not easy.
Well, I would hesitate. Anything's possible given time and money in my worldview, but we've not been successful thus far.
Is that something we need to explore further? It's not that important.
I need to take that one for the record. Let me think about that. We've never really done that. We used to manage one large list. And that was when I first got here. As you move through RAD, where each property has a separate contract with HUD and a separate, basically, business entity, part of that requirement was to have separate waiting lists. Well, we did that, and then we realized that there was no good way to say, well, we have X number of people waiting, because there was no way to take those basic mechanical lists in our property management system and cross-reference across the properties. But let me check. And I'll come back to you on answering how we could give a better estimate of how many people are on the macro waiting list for all MDHA properties. We certainly can do it on a property by property basis. That's very straightforward. What is not as straightforward is knowing that everyone on this waiting list is not on another waiting list. That's a little bit more difficult. But let me check and get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thaden.
Yes, Jim, I'm trying to understand. So when you were referencing the ESG funds that came out of the CARES Act, so I believe that we approved basically what those uses were going to be, but it sounds like maybe there is some new thinking or reconciliation going on with stakeholders and the mayor's office. Is that can you help us understand it?
Sure. So, I mean, I've been clear and I was hitting a lot of topics quickly. We've received 2 pots of money, and Mel, if you're on, clean me up if I mess this up. We've essentially received 2 funding streams of emergency solution grants. The original, which is what you've approved, ML is executing, RFA is out there, that's for rental assistance. And then after you've done that work, HUD provided another $8.4 million. That $8.4 million, we have not determined how to use those funds. We are working in a working group with a HUD technical assistant at the city level to identify what the city's best and highest use of those funds will be for the $8.4 million. So that part has not been worked out yet, but there is a very good process underway. The funds we identified we received the funds sometime in June, roughly. We immediately started working with Kristen Wilson and others to make sure, and the Homeless Impact Division, because emergency solution grants are for homeless only. We immediately put together a working group, and we immediately asked HUD for a technical assistant to come, work through all the process. And TA is supervising it. It's really a second round of ESG funding, the $8.4 million that we have not yet decided on what to do with, and hence have not come to the board to ask for approval. We won't do that until we have a city MDA, until the city's intent is clear and they've worked through the stakeholders, with us being right there and the technical assistance fund being right there to make sure the stakeholder needs are met and the highest and best uses are addressed. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that does. And that is pandemic related funding, correct?
Absolutely. It's COVID money, CARES money.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. My other question, and sorry to get into the nitty gritty, but I'm just curious if there's some signaling here. When you were talking about THCA's proposed changes to the qualified allocation plan and the issues there, I was very curious to know actually what were the 3 things that you felt that you needed to comment on, and what were the 2 things that were in fact resolved?
Well, I'll do the best I can. I don't have the detail right fresh in hand, but there were 2. One was called Enterprise 360, which was, and I'm all for it. And we build energy efficient buildings. We're all for it, but it was very specific and detailed and constraining in how you had to meet very finite specific goals, a specific type of appliance as an example, and others. It made it difficult, not just for us, but for other users of the LIHTC program. And the other, and I may have to have Jim Thilgen weigh in on this one, but the other one was one whose intent and concept I applaud. It was to push LIHTC into areas that did not have concentrations of poverty. That was going to work against us because we're taking concentrations of, and it was going to be a scoring mechanism that would reward those that went to areas of not concentrated poverty. Concept's great, but if you're us, everything we're doing with our LIHTC's in concentrated poverty, and we're remediating it by bringing wealthier incomes in once we rebuild. So I had to make that case, and they really hadn't thought about that aspect of it, that if you're starting with concentrated poverty and you're fixing it, so to speak, you're going to mixed income by bringing in workforce and higher, and you're at a competitive disadvantage for the LIHTC program that's your foundation, you're working against the intent of having decentralized poverty. So we had made that case, and in both those cases, I believe we were successful. And Jim Thilgen, if you're on, can you provide amplifying detail to my off the top of my head narrative?
Okay, and I think that there's a couple of other issues that we commented on. One of them was that if any time since I don't know, 2009, if you change the site of a light tech project that you had been approved for, basically it was a blackball that you could not, there was a serious penalty assessed against you, and basically you were not going to be qualified. So for example, basketball 2 that we're completing right now initially was going to be over at Cheatham Place. We asked them to move it because that didn't work out because of historical people. That would have been a blackball. That would have put us out of the game for a while. The other thing that they had proposed and they left out, the innovative round for which we got the funding for Curb Victory Hall. They eliminated that whole section of the QAP. So there's not going to be an innovative round this year. We kind of commented against that, and they did not take our comment.
So we were basically 2 for 3, Commissioner. We did not, as you know, the innovative round was highly useful for us for Curb Victory Hall, and we would love to have competed again, but it's not going to happen this year.
No, I really appreciate that, because I think what the intent behind it was to really understand if THGA is moving prioritization towards things that would not necessarily support our Envision projects. And I appreciate their interest here is trying to ensure that affordable housing is in fact getting into high opportunity areas. But it sounds like you made the exact right case for explaining that, you know, we are in fact still doing that. So thank you. I appreciate that detail.
Other questions on the executive director's report?
Just one quick question on the Faircloth vouchers. I think there were 1,000 to begin with. 50 are going to be used at the Randy Rogers project. So we have quite a number left to be able to be used for future projects.
Commissioner, that's correct. Our original Faircloth inventory was right at 1,069, I believe. I'll have to come back. I'll take this for the record. So that's off the top of my head. I get a little nervous. I'm bad about doing that, but that's in the ballpark. We used a certain number at George Barrett Manor down the hill here. That was all new inventory off Faircloth. Roughly, again, I should know that number. I probably got it here in front of me somewhere. That's in the realm of 70, which brought us just under 1,000. We have 50 going into Randy Rogers, and then we have 25 more, I think. I may have that wrong, but we have a smaller number going into the townhomes. I'll get you the exact figure, but it's around 900 apartments.
Yeah, that's good.
And the payoff, the return on investment there, if we can build it, you know, we get perpetual subsidy. I mean, and so I don't, you know, you can amortize that in a lot of ways in a dollar analysis, but in terms of mission analysis of increasing the supply of affordable housing for people of low income, that's what we're all about. It's just, it has to be done in a specific way, and it's very cash intensive, very cash intensive. That's why the capital spending plan was manna from heaven for both the Randy Rogers project and the townhomes. But I'll get an exact number. I've got that and the wait list question to get back to you and Commissioner Coleman on.
I have another question, and it's related to the Envision Center, the good news relative to Napier and Sudicum. What's going on with that, and who are the nonprofit partners?
Well, we applied for an Envision Center. We've been working on it for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
We have Tennessee Voc Rehab, United Way, Financial Empowerment Center, others off the top of my head that have agreed to collaborate with us. The concept of Envision Center is driven by the Secretary of HUD, and it's to provide a location for residents of low-income housing, federally subsidized low-income housing, to come receive the services they need to get better jobs, better education, and to move on from housing. Our approach right now has several components. We are working with Second Harvest to get a food truck, which is not quite ready for prime time for the board, but that's a type discussion we're in. And is Curtis Thomas or Buck on the phone? I don't know who else is on.
This is Saul. There is a full list, I believe, of all the partners in the minutes from last meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll
It's
look.
quite a
Thank
long
you.
list that I can't do justice off the top of my head, but we've reached out to everyone we can think of. Christina Long has been very helpful. Curtis Thomas has worked this. Lisa Booker, who's the site director, is wonderful. And we've been working really diligently to bring people into this. And we've got 20, I don't have the exact number, but roughly 20 families are going to receive deep casework for us to identify their needs and as a pilot program to identify the needs they have specifically, and then to link the nonprofit with the need, with our caseworker being the kind of gatekeeper.
Thank you.
Is the case management provided by MDHA staff, the nonprofit partner staff, or a combination of both?
Caseworker right now is us. One thing that you're stealing all my thunder. I'm not ready to tell everything, but I guess, we are working to develop a thing called the Envision application to leverage with technology our caseworkers' bandwidth. We have it under development. HUD loves it. They're extraordinarily excited about it. It's possible. It will become a best practice for others. We intend to show that to you next month in a test, show you an example of it at our next board meeting. This has all come together in the last 2 to 3 weeks in this application thing, because the very question you had, I had. We can't afford enough full-time equivalents to cover the number of residents we want to cover. Is there some other way? And that's what the staff has come upon, is an application that automatically brings in the nonprofits and allows a caseworker to track a lot more exactly. So that's the concept. As you know, the difference between concept and execution is a long way. And we're about this far. We just got through the concept by going, oh, this is a great idea. And we have a software developer, the same one's doing the OPS screens we hope to show you soon, so you've got transparency and knowledge of what's going on. We've got that same team working on it.
Other questions of the executive director? I want to add my interest to that of Commissioner Coleman on the waiting list. I think at a time when we have changed so significantly the way in which we create the lists and handle the lists, it makes good sense for us to focus on it both as a work in progress and also on an understanding of both need and how we're meeting the need. I would add to the questions that she's asked, the length of time that individuals remain on the waiting list and the melt from the waiting list, those who come and leave the waiting list, those who went, and also then the specific question, which is the one you mentioned, I think, and that is the melt that occurs when we check the waiting list. Or any better way to assess the questions that Commissioner Coleman was really getting to, which at the core of it is the needs of the city and how we are meeting the needs of the city within the resources that we have. It's a larger question that we've asked as a board. We've begun to talk about in the retreat. I think we'll keep thinking about that both in a retreat setting and otherwise, but I think Commissioner Coleman in particular has raised a very timely issue, especially given the move from the consolidated list managed by the agency to the decentralized list now maintained. And that then goes to the very fine point that she also raised, which is at some stage, I do think probably there is a reason, at least the board would be interested in who is on what lists and for how long. And how do people know to be on 3 or 6 or 8 or 10? Because that's another question, how we inform them, how we engage them, and how we involve them. Anyway, that's a larger set of questions building on the foundation that Commissioner Coleman laid, and I appreciate that very much. And we can begin with the report that you'll give us next month on that, but I put out for the board the possibility that we might take some time this fall to dive deeply into that question, because it's a recurring, we've come to this question of the waiting list and the basic service being provided more than a few times since the beginning of this year. No further questions for the executive director. We move now to the review of the retreat and board information requests before, again, the most exciting part of the day, the ethics training, which really is transformative in more ways than we will know until so begins. So the retreat request review.
So, Chair, I do have one question. And is part question is part recommendation. I think one of the things that I would make the request to our executive team is that for the executive director's comments, is that they're provided in some type of format, right? Because it's very difficult to track on a month-to-month basis just to remember what was said in words, as opposed to having a framework that says, here are the 4 or 5 things that are important that we're working on, and it stays in the form of a running list or a working list. I think to figure out how to present something in that manner so that issues aren't simply relied upon the strength of the executive notes and his assistant, I think would be good for us to have a format for that. And I think in any large organization, you would typically have something from the CEO that says, here's a summary of whatever it was from the last period to the next period, so that the board members are actually seeing consistent information on a month-to-month basis.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do believe in the past, the report has been in written form. I don't believe that we received, tell me if I've got, all right, but in past board meetings, you are correct that we've had a written report, and that written report has been a part of our package. But I think we're in that space saying 2 things, which is a written report actually that's arranged in a way that is consistent and flows from meeting to meeting and allows board members to know what to expect. I think you heard the request, and I presume you have you have it now in written form for this meeting, and we'll file that and make this written report a part of the agenda for this meeting, and hopefully your comment and question will have an effect. Other questions for the executive director before we move on to items 8 and 9? Thank you, Commissioner Ansari.
This, I raised the question before, and I'm not sure if I raised it individually with Jim or at a board meeting. I was concerned about the accident with the little boy in one of our properties, and I think the response was we would be getting, it was still being, I guess, investigated, and we will be getting a report in the future, and I'm just trying to figure out where that is.
Mr. Robinson.
Still under investigation. We believe it's going to be a subject of litigation, and our insurance company is handling it. Will Chopin, are you on? Can you give an update? I don't want to cross a line here because of legal constraints.
Good afternoon, Mr. Harbison, Commissioner Coleman. It is under investigation. The matter was referred early to our insurance carrier, who provided a litigation defense counsel from the firm of Leitner Williams, Dooley Napolitan. There's not been a lawsuit filed. We have we have received a letter from an attorney who has been representing the family to some extent, but at this time, our outside counsel is planning and preparing for litigation in the future, and there's a lot of coordination with the entities that were involved in the manufacture, installation of the garage door, and investigations are underway to get all the information, get all the investigation taken care of, and just get everything maintained and preserved from an evidentiary standpoint, and just to the point where if this does go to litigation, that we are as prepared as we possibly can be.
Further questions? Seeing none, we are now, the slide before us is item number 8, and that will be followed by the board information request. Mr. Harbison.
So from the board request, we'll do ethics training today. I realize this is an eye chart, and I apologize. It hasn't changed since we published it, I think, before. which is earlier this month, but we can send this out again. Financial review and budget, the board is very aware of. Our cash investment policy review will include, which is very simple. There's not a lot to that, but we'll include that for the next finance committee meeting, and that's scheduled for September. Promise Zone Opportunity Zone introduction we'll cover in October. Our overall development and resource plan in October. And we're ongoing negotiations with the SEIU on the MOA. And we'll update you in November where we stand on that. And it's somewhat difficult. Our like agencies that I'm contacting, for example, like Memphis, they've outsourced all their staff as a result of COVID, so they don't have a union anymore. So we're running into that and trying. I usually pick Memphis and Knoxville. So we're having a little trouble on comparative analysis, but we're working on that. We have no land donated in the last 6 years in the shared equity home ownership model. We'll keep researching that one, but that's the remaining topics from last year's board for the staff. There's a long list of completed topics, which I think you're all familiar with because you obviously helped me complete them. And that's kind of where we stand.
Any questions about that list? If not, I would move on to number 9. Paulette, did you
This
have a
isn't a
question?
question, it's a comment. In other sectors than public housing, we have a lot of peer cities, and I don't know what if those that are our peer cities for purposes of business and economic characteristics are the same as those for public housing. So if we're running into problems with the two we usually use, we may want to look at peer cities outside of Tennessee, especially those with unions. So there may be some other options, is what I'm suggesting.
I think you're exactly right. In fact,
We'll expand our search.
In fact, in our discussions in the past, particularly on the issue of performance auditing, which has been done historically in this city, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Health Department, we do actually have a basket of cities that we consider peer. And they can vary slightly, but in general, they would begin with Jacksonville and Charlotte and move across the country, Austin, Denver, there, Portland, Seattle. Those are all cities that for different purposes and some year in and year out are used. I think, Commissioner Coleman, you're exactly right. Item number 9.
Let's see. That's the date. Okay, I must. Well, Gus, is this one I sent you? I must have sent you the wrong one. So today I'll follow with disadvantage. We've already covered safety procedures last month. That should have been rolled down to a completed task, which I've got on a separate spreadsheet. I didn't update. Disadvantaged business enterprise, population demographics, and equal opportunity employee demographics we'll do next. Our security program in September. Envision Center and Resident Opportunity in September. That is a component of the board presentation on resource development. The IDB board history and presentation, that is to be determined, actually. I apologize for that. And we've done, I think, a lot of work on the redevelopment district. We still have design review standards to cover, I believe, at the request of the board chair. Obviously, the budget updates, we have a due out of August 20th. And I think that's what I've got now, although I've got about another 5 or so to add from today that we will either close out at a board or attempt to close out with point papers in order to keep the board moving. So if there are not any questions, I can move to the top 3 items. The disadvantaged business enterprise slide, please. First slide, there we go. I'll send this as soon as we're done. But can everyone see the right-hand column on their screens? I know the board chair will have some trouble probably. That is our total DBE. This is a report we give to the federal government periodically, at least annual. I think it's more frequent than that.
Jim, can I ask that someone put this in maybe presentation mode so we can see the actual slide and not the ones on the side? See if the presentation
Gus,
make it any better. Make it any larger.
Well, we don't need the next slide as well. There you go.
There we go.
So our goal, which is a procedural goal, is 20% diversified business enterprises. We beat that every year that I've been here. Our overall over a 5-year run is 30%. Tracking this year, we're ahead of goal at 23.3%. We had a great year in 2018 and in 2019, 26. So you'll see the numbers on the right-hand side. You see the values in dollars. I will send the slides out. I apologize I didn't get them out before we were working. I was validating numbers to make sure it was all squared away before the meeting today. And then I'll segue to the left-hand side, minority business enterprise. We've done quite well, double digits except for 19. We're single digits thus far this year. Disabled veterans, we've not done quite as well. Women's business, we've done extraordinarily well, and small business, we've done well. So those are the categories that make up your diversified business enterprise requirements under the federal rules for protected status. And our 5-year run's quite good. We're a little bit off this year. We're above our goal, but we'd like to be much more than goal. And those are our statistics.
So Jim, a couple quick questions. If I look at this column and just from a mathematic perspective, it's just add MBE plus disabled veterans plus WBE plus small business equals total DBE. Is that the mathematics?
Yes, and I'm sure you're going to check my numbers. I'm
No,
up
no,
at the
no,
QC.
I just want to make sure I was interpreting.
That's correct. Right. Those are the major components. I think there's one more very small component, but I'm not certain of that. These are the ones that I sign off on the reports and that we send up the chain. And that's correct, and that's how I generally do it.
And so just a couple of just framework questions. From 2017 to 18, we essentially doubled our participation on the total DBE awarded. What changed between, in your opinion, what changed between 17 and 18?
We had a huge amount of money and contracts that went out, and we were very aggressive in soliciting, much the same way we are always aggressive, but since we had a higher volume of construction, we just seemed to have done better with the DBE pieces. 17 is when we let the contracts and started for pretty much all the construction. You see that's finishing up around here. Kirkpatrick, 10th and Jefferson was under that rubric. So was Harper Cove Flats. And, you know, we had the same third party. We have a third party group, Morgan & Morgan, that was solicits DBE for us. They're quite successful. I think what I would attribute mainly to volume and opportunity. We just had a lot more opportunity to offer people. And because of that, we're able to get more people involved.
Got it. So would it be fair to say is that because of our envision process, our contracting volumes have gone up from a construction side, and most of that volume has come through our increased construction programs?
Yes, that's a fair statement. We have a floor of sort of our regular federal business, but that's absolutely true.
Got it. And so if you could have your staff prepare a couple things for me. One is, when you look at each one of these categories, can you identify, even if you don't put the names down, is which firms are the top 5 firms in each category? So I'd be interested to know under MBE awarded is the top 5 folks, are they all doing $200,000 bids, or they're doing $2 and $3 million worth of business in that category, in the same, the same across the category?
Okay.
And the second question I would ask is, are these direct awards from MDHA directly to these firms?
Some are and some are not. So DBE as a subcontractor to a RG Anderson does count under our rules, and we give them standards they must meet for their application, and we grade them in the RFQ process on the number of subs they bring along. So some are direct, some are not, but they both count. There's nothing below the subcontractor level, but if you've got a major sub that's your steel fabricator, And there's some real good ones out there that are that meet the standards for DBE. We get credit for that.
That's right. So could you provide the percentage that are direct MDHA awards versus what we are achieving through our third party, through a third party prime? So just two numbers.
Okay.
From a percentage perspective. Okay.
If this is Brent, I'm sitting here listening. It's one of the things I take care of. Your first question was you're looking for dollars, like how many, the average dollar amount of firms that are awarded, what their contracts are. That's the one I didn't quite follow.
I think I've got it, Brent. I'll get you the guidance. If not, I'll clean it up with AO.
Okay.
I'll circle back to it.
That's right. It's just pretty simple. Under NBE awarded, where we're for 2019, and let's just stick with 19 since we got complete numbers. If there are $5.172 million awarded to NBEs, who are the top 5 contractors, and what is the aggregate amount of money awarded with those contractors? So it would be, number 1 would be Jones Construction, and it's $288,000. Number 2 is Joe's Construction. That number is $175,000.
Got it.
And then the second category is that under NBE, under disabled veterans, under WBE, under small business, and under total DBE is what percentage are awarded directly from MDHA and what is awarded through third-party contractors? Just for 2019, not since 14, 15, just for 19.
Got it.
Jim, I just have a question about the goals. Do you have, does the agency have individual goals that it tries to hit for the category MBE, or the category WBE, and for the category small business awards? Do you have targets as an agency within those different categories that you try to hit?
No, we do not. We target the total DBE. We track what happens below the DBE level because we get asked and we have to report it, but it's not a specific goal for any of those. The goal is 20% diversified business.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm sorry, Jim, the third question I had on this, under WBE awarded and small business awarded, are those individual and distinct categories? Or can Hawkins Landscaping be awarded $6 million in their WBE category, but also have $4 million, that $4 million show up under small business awarded?
I don't know that one. I'll have to take that for the record. I just don't know. Let me check and get back to you on that one. I don't know. I see your point. It's possible you could be a women's business, being on $32 million a year and double count. I don't think we do that, but I actually don't know. But we'll check.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions concerning this?
Yeah, my question is, how do we arrive at the goal of 20%, and what needs to happen to change that?
Well, I have to take that for the record. I actually don't remember. We did this assessment when I first got here, and we thought it was a reasonable goal. Let me take that for the record. It's a thoughtful question and get an answer to you soon. I actually don't recall. I know we've reviewed it a couple times. I don't recall the process that led to 20%. I mean, these are goals. They're not, there's nothing that I think is, I want to confuse anyone. We don't have a statutory or regulatory requirement for this. We're trying to do the right thing. So that's been our internal goal pretty much since we set it in 14, and I'll have to go back and see what our process was.
Yes, I understand all of that, and the only reason I'm asking is there is a perception that particularly among contractors that there isn't much being done by the city particularly, and then MDHA more specifically, in proactively ensuring and facilitating business from all of these different categories, and particularly MBEs?
Well, we get the answers for you and hope you can help us work against that perception.
It would, I think it would help, see if the commission agrees, in making that determination, for us to have these same numbers over the same period of time for the city of Nashville. They have these same numbers in these same categories. So to compare ourselves to the city at large, and then back to Commissioner Coleman's earlier point, to then compare ourselves to that basket of peer cities in the same categories, and then finally the national averages across our business. I think we should look for those numbers. I believe, again, I'm at the pleasure of the commission on this, but I think that would inform our conversation and then inform the larger community, depending on where we track in the world. Any other questions on this item?
Just one comment on that, Chair. I think the procurement at the city will have data not only for the city but for convention center, airport authorities. So you might want to start with that, all the different city divisions, and then move to the broader question. Just a suggestion. So
no, I think breaking it out, as much information as we can obtain. Again, back to both, I think, Commissioner Ansari and Commissioner Coleman's points here. Is a sense of knowing both where we are in the context of this immediate world, and then absolutely right in the larger world as well. And that will then also inform the target figures. I think we're all focused, and certainly my eyes moved immediately to the lower left portion of this graph, and it will be instructive to see where the balance of the city and the country is at this time in those categories. But I agree with Mr. Solomon. I think you can help Mr. Harbison follow up on that request.
And the only additional comment I would add to that, Chair, is it's one thing to compare us against a basket set of cities, and there's another thing for us to set high standards for ourselves for performance relative to what we're doing. And so
I agree.
I think that I'll continue to be, inquisitive about, the procedural 20%, and it was almost presented to this board today as if we're doing everybody a favor by making it 20%, right? And I think that is part of the perception, right, that makes it very difficult to pull through as well. We don't have to do it, but we do it at 20% anyway.
I hear you, and I understand, and I think we should set the highest possible standards. I totally agree.
Okay.
But I think this has not come. This is here because we asked for it, and right. I think it's very important that we have it. It's a good start of the conversation, but I agree with every comment that's been made. It's just the start of the conversation, and knowing where we are first, I think helps us set the high standards. And if it turns out, as Mr. Solomon points out, that the airport is doing something different and better, or some other portion of the city is doing something different and better in the same labor market, in the same conditions at the same time, we ought to know that when we think about what our goals would be. On the other hand, if we're leading the way here, but not doing as well as Austin or Denver or Memphis, whatever city it may be, that also, I think we're just at the beginning, and I understand Commissioner Ansari, and I agree.
And I just want to add, if I've come across that we're doing this for any other reason than trying to do the right thing, we didn't have a standard that I recall when we got here. Maybe we did. I don't recall how we came to 20%. It seemed like a reasonable standard at the time. We're happy to adopt any standard the board wants, and we actively, honestly, forthrightly, repetitively solicit minority, women, small business, veterans business. That is our ethos. That's the population we serve. And if I came across in any other way, I apologize, and that's not what I want the public to take away, whoever watches this. We work really hard at this all the time. We hire third-party contractors to do this specifically to recruit. And we ask every contractor that gets interviewed, every architect, what are they doing to promote diversity business? What are they doing to promote minority business? What are you doing to promote small business? It's part of the discussion. It's part of the requirement for them to get hired by us. So please, if I've given that impression, I apologize. That was not my intent. We always can do better. We've worked hard at what we've done here, and we continue to work hard at it. And if the goals go up, that's great. We will do everything we can to get there. But, 30% of our work over the last 5 years is not maybe as good as it should have been, but it's been achieved in an honest, hard way to bring as much business to the table as possible for those that didn't have an opportunity elsewhere.
That's right. And Jim, I'll say very specifically, there was no offense taken. I know there's lots of demands by a very curious and inquisitive board, and these meetings go a long time, and you take a lot of notes, and so I understand. No need to apologize.
There, just one quick question on the slide itself. In the disabled veterans category, is there? I see. It's just not. It's a 93. I see. It's a $93,000 figure. Understood. All right. Got it. Thank you. Next item.
You're on mute, Jim.
Oops. I think the slide, I won't read it here. I believe this gets at the questions that had been asked previously. On the first portion, that is for our apartments. We, to my knowledge, and we've checked, if you are a market rate or a workforce renter not receiving federal subsidy, there is no obligation, nor can we require you to give us demographic background. So this is for the bricks and mortar subsidized apartments in the PBRA inventory that we have data on through our leases and through the ADP payroll program. These numbers have, in my mind, I see these about once a year. They've been consistent throughout my tenure. Roughly 1/4 elderly, 3/4 non-elderly. Female head of household is, it's actually, that's a slightly less, and I've seen it as up as high as 83%. We're heavily African-American, very, very huge majority. After that, a very small Caucasian and virtually no other ethnicities. And that's our resident population in the apartments. Separately, and we did not combine them because we thought it would be instructive, and I can't combine them. We thought it'd be instructive because these are different programs. They have separate federal requirements for reporting that are similar, but not quite the same. And it's a little bit harder, frankly, in the voucher program to identify female head of household as an example, as opposed to male head of household. But the conclusions are not dramatically different statistically. A little bit less elderly, a little bit more non-elderly. We are required to track female head of household with children, which we don't track in a specific way in our bricks and mortar. So we know that finitely. Our female head of household without children is that number is solid, but it takes more work. It's not something that's automatically garnered. And then 27% male. So roughly very similar statistics between both populations. Again, heavily African-American, a little bit more Caucasian in our voucher population. And we actually do have some numbers. The numbers for Asian Pacific Islander or other are almost insignificant in the bricks and mortar. There's close to 1% total for Asian and Pacific Islander for the vouchers. And this is the housing choice voucher inventory. SRO, moderate rehab, are different types of vouchers, and VASH that have different reporting requirements. We still have to pull those, but I suspect that's a total number of about another 900 vouchers that we're still researching. There's not a solid collated database on those, but I don't think you'll see much change. Your veterans vouchers are going to heavily trend towards male when we did check about 2 years ago, and we're still pulling those. So that's our it's a report on demographics for the resident population, subject to your questions.
So, Jim, I just need some clarification. The first box, it says demographic information for MDHA residents receiving monthly housing assistance payments in affordable housing. At some point, one of our recent meetings, I think I asked just in general, the percent of the senior population. And in my notes, I noted that like 47% of the residents were seniors. I think I've got something wrong. I'm kind of confused.
Well, that may have been the danger. I can't answer. These are the numbers that we've got. Our towers obviously are heavily elderly, as it's the requirement. And this is the data that we come up with as we pulled it together. I'll go back and check it again, but
that's okay. So this includes towers, small multifamily duplex,
neighborhood housing, correct? Yep.
And then your large, and then the larger public housing sites. It includes everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And will this be sent to us electronically, these slides?
Yes, and since there's an interest here, we're going to keep tracking this and keep drilling down and make sure that our data, should there be some data infidelity, that we'll update it as needed.
Thank you.
Other questions on this demographic information?
So, Jim, this is just a broad question, and I don't expect any level of specificity. But is there what you would call like a large turnover in the subsidized in our portfolio of housing, like I'm used to seeing in multifamily, like every 3 years, you've had 100% turnover over kind of sort of 2 to 3 year window. Are we turning over like 3% of our units a year, 5%, like 50%?
I can get a percentage for you, but it's not a large turnover, and nothing like commercial or nothing like multifamily and market rate. We have, hence the concern with multi-generational poverty, right, and that people stay, and there's a legacy there. And so we do have a relatively stable population. It also means that you don't have the opportunity to bring people in from the outside. So generally, it is certainly far more stable than the regular multifamily market, family multifamily market. And certainly very stable in the properties that are deemed to be, shall we say, attractive, like our towers and our Hope 6 properties. Right. Our turnover in the traditional family properties is higher, but still it's very stable. And we'll get it's number 11. Yeah, and turnover rate.
And to Kay's question, right? And again, this is just an observation. There's nothing for anybody to do here. Given that there's such low turnover, I was surprised that the elderly population in our communities was 24% out. Just in my mind, I would have thought that would have been higher, because I did get the sense that people will tend to stay into for as long as they possibly could. So I just thought that number would be higher. It's just surprising. I'm not suggesting it's wrong. I'm not suggesting there's any work to do around it. It was lower than I would have anticipated.
Other questions? I have a quick question in this space. One of the things that you said, Jim, in identifying this information is that it's not easy to determine in all of these categories. And yet when I look at the numbers, they all add up to 100. So the question is, where are the people that we are unable to determine, and how do they come into this data?
The only area we had real struggle with was determining female non-head of household with children. Female without children head of household. It's a category that's not as in the voucher program. It's not as. I
understand. What I'm saying is, though, the data reflects that we have captured it. It does seem to me that we have 100% of the numbers there.
Well, we have no outliers left. We were able to run it to ground. I was just saying it was a challenge.
Okay. It wasn't easy to do. It wasn't easy to do, but we did it. That's right. I appreciate that. This, and I leave it to the board. This is another area in which trends over time, as well as comparisons to comparable markets, may or may not be interesting to the board, but it's one of the few ways that you can have a sense of where you are and where you're headed and where your needs are.
Commissioner
slide.
Purcell, if I could just speak to that.
Please.
I think as a community, the city of Nashville, thinking about the bigger picture of housing needs, where we are, who's doing what, and MDHA is doing all of this work. I think this is the kind of information that should flow into that larger conversation that we have not, to this date, I don't believe, done yet. But I think it's a well worth an investment of time to do that. And I just want to go on record with that.
No, I think you're exactly right, and I think it fits precisely with the conversation that Commissioner Coleman began regarding waiting lists, and that's all of these things connect up and ultimately are at the core of the vision and the mission of this agency and of the city as a whole. I could not agree with you more, and I think we're building to an understanding, a shared understanding about all of that as we move into the fall. Hopeful that it builds into something more cohesive and action-driven by the first of next year. But first, we have to have the information, and we're on our way, but we're just beginning. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harbison, was there another slide?
Yes. Next slide, please. We also asked for our employee demographics. This is the breakdown of our 334 employees. We're blessed right now to have a very small number of vacancies. So this is, we're essentially at full strength. You see the numbers, 56 male, 44% female. We're largely African-American in our overall population. You see the breakouts. And in our senior leadership, which these are those pay grades that with their bonuses and salaries are at six figures generally, or right at six figures. You see those figures, and the last bullet on the disabled veterans, that does count as protected class. None of those happen to be African American. But I did not include those as a separate category.
Questions?
What percentage of the employees are within the senior level ship leader?
Oh, I got to think a minute. Let me take that for the record. There should be 30. Let me take it for the record.
Don't guess.
Let me take it for the record. I'll get that to you.
It's a very helpful slide. Any other questions?
Jim, can you go back one slide, please? Got it. Okay, thank you.
What are the number of employees in the senior leadership level?
Mm-hmm.
You have 334 employees overall in the first box. Do we know the number in the second box?
I believe I do, but I'm not going to take a chance.
That's all right. That's all right. That's fine. We can just.
They're all reports for me, so.
I know. That's fine. We could update this slide and just and
I'll put it on there.
And put it on the agenda for next month. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And Jim, could you also provide an org chart, please?
Sure.
I think there is one. Wasn't there one circulated actually in the Human Resources meeting this morning?
It's in the, I believe it's in the Public Housing Plan. That's easy. We'll send it. It's not a problem.
Thank you, Ailey.
I think we had one in the back of the, is it in the back of the?
It's in the back of the HR packet.
Yeah, yep. Got it.
And on that form, by the way, just for the record, I think it says revised July of 2020, doesn't it? Isn't that the form that says that? I don't think it was revised in July of 2020. I just think it was printed in July of 2020, unless I've got.
I'll check it and get a current one out. The only change has been we've filled the chief operating officer billet. So on our org chart for a period of time, we had development and operations in one position. And you could talk about how we do that. We could have had two positions with one vacant, but in fact, since we had one person filling both, we had that in the org chart for clarity till we were able to hire someone.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ansari. Let's connect the org chart and this slide and take it up in this section of the agenda next month. Any other questions? Is there another slide, Jim, or does that conclude the?
That's it.
All right, and then we've added a few things to the list. We're just about to check off the ethics training, which I have been teasing for some time. Before we get to that point, I want to say for the record that I believe Commissioner Batts has joined us some time ago, and so she is present. I'm not sure that we've had any other commissioners join us. And the good news is that that any commissioner that is unable to have the ethics training at this time will have the unique and special opportunity for private individualized ethics training, which is even more exciting than group ethics training because you have the ability to really act out the parts and often involves role playing and wearing of hats. So the commissioners that are unable to make this won't. I have to ask you all something though, and that's just the chair's question to you. It is now 1:20, and I'm with you. This is going to take, I'm advised by Mr. Solomon, 45 minutes, and then it may take 10 minutes for Ms. Lyle to correct mistakes that Mr. Solomon has made in the first part of the presentation. So or add. I don't want to delay ethics training any longer. On the other hand, I'm very sensitive to the fact that it is 1:15 and we are not serving lunch to you all. I noticed as I look at you, most of you haven't taken even a sip of water. So we can go right in. Oh, well, good. Thanks, Aoli. Thanks for making me, now I feel dry. We can jump in. We can take a 3-minute break. We can, Mr. Solomon, you may have another idea about how to proceed. But I'm prepared to move forward right now. I'm at the will of the committee. Paul, I can't hear you.
All right. How long is the ethics training?
About 45 minutes, I believe, depending on questions. And the good news is you only have to have it once a year, and when it's over, it's over. Commissioner Thayer.
I might have to leave it a little bit early, so I leave it up to Saul if we should schedule separately or if missing the last 5 to 10 minutes is appropriate.
At the risk of setting myself up for some pain in the future, I do actually think it'd be better to have a separately scheduled meeting, like maybe one of the committee meeting slots everybody could attend. First of all, I know Commissioner Campbell's not here. It would be great if you were here. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I wouldn't like the record to reflect that we had a 2-hour board meeting and then we did the ethics training. That's just something that it's not a great visual, not that anybody might, who knows who to find that out. So I think it's important enough that we should give it the attention it deserves, especially because I've put in 77 hours on developing the slides for this. And so with that in mind, I really do think that this is not a great time to do it. So, and I feel bad because Jim had checked this one off of his list. So I do feel badly about that. I think it would be best for us to try to find the time to reschedule. So.
Well, I'm looking at the commission. I'm looking at each of you. You seem to have, Paige is somewhat disappointed, but as the commission seems to be slightly okay with that. They're still doing the math, Saul. The 77 hours, they're thinking we may actually not have the money to afford the presentation. We have to go back and check the budget on this whole thing.
We'll need your pro bono rate.
Something. But if you're driving a new car, we're going to know it. Anyway, would you all, assuming, and I think seriously, we don't want this to be delayed a long time. Can we try to find a time maybe in the balance of this month of August? Maybe as early as 8:30 or something in the morning. Would it be better if we did it early and when you're fresh and exuberant and thinking ethically, which is the first thing in the morning is you're especially ethical. It's by 4 o'clock in the afternoon you start to wonder. So
you get corrupted as the day goes on.
you get whatever. No, you don't. Just for the record, he's kidding. I know that. I know him. He's making a joke. It's not.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Got it. All right. Well, y'all, do I take that as general agreement that we will do this? We will do it this month. We'll be all in.
Yes.
And everyone understands that if you can't be there for the meeting, we'll understand that. But Saul and Paige will come to your home. And so that's just, you just have to decide which way you want to receive this training. All right. That being the case, we're now on agenda item number 11, which is additional business to come before the MDHA Board of Commissioners. Is there any additional business? I see no additional business. There being none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion's made, properly seconded by Commissioner Ansari. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. And you adopt. You are adjourned. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.